Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Directly switch the thing to me so I can share as well later.
Okay, it's going
Just
live.
let us know when we're live.
I'll let you know. Okay, we're live.
Cool. Welcome. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Good to see you all in the chat. G-UNI, I hope you made it, taking a little time off work. We have Lucas in the chat. Robert is here for the memes. We've got some memes in store for you as well. Hope you're enjoying the Mediterranean heat over there in Greece. George, if you're out here watching. Cool. We'll gather up a few more users, a few more viewers, and we'll get started.
Let me just get Yaya in as well. More Gelato legendary members entering the chat. I like to see that. Hey Yaya, what's up?
Hey.
Hey, Louis, we cannot see you.
Good to see you, Yaya.
Good to see you, dude. How you doing?
Good. George, there you are. I knew you would be tuning in today.
Yeah, how many people are we? Shall I kick things off or shall we wait a minute?
Give it another minute or so.
Alrighty. Yeah, so maybe we can talk about where we are tuning in from, right? So I'm in Switzerland, and I think some other people were. Where are you guys at?
I'm in New York here. Yaya's in Berlin.
Dan's from down under, from Melbourne, Australia.
Australia.
We had some pretty violent winds last night. That was a headache to deal with today, but glad we got it all sorted. Things have been able to calm down a little.
I think David also wants to enter.
Good old Zug, Switzerland over here, Crypto Valley, you already know.
Nice.
DeFi Dave never left Miami, I think.
Hey, Dave.
Welcome, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
All good.
All good, yeah. Yeah, shall I kick things off?
Yeah, I think we've got everybody here.
Cool, yeah.
Ready to go?
Mathieu is also coming in right now. All right. So I think I can officially start the community call this time. And I think the last one is already like a month ago, I think, since we did our last one. And yeah, a lot has changed. We've been working tirelessly on a lot of new features, a lot of admin work in the background, and yeah, a lot of partnerships that we did. So we've been really, really busy. And yeah, we just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick overview and feedback of what we've been up to. And then later we will dive actually into a really new, soon to be live feature that is really, really amazing, that I think will be super powerful in the upcoming future. And yeah, Ari will take over that, and he will discuss it in more detail. But yeah, I think let me just share my screen so I can visualize a couple of things here. What we've been up to in the past few months. Can you all see that? I think you should see Sorbet. Right. Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, what has happened in the last month, right? I think a lot has happened. We worked a lot on Sorbet. A lot of work also happened in the back end, making it more efficient. Sorbet started with only being on mainnet Ethereum, right? And we actually got it hooked up on Polygon. Soon after it's live, you can execute orders on QuickSwap. And then actually we recently launched it also on Phantom. I think Sorbet is not hooked up to Phantom yet, but like all the backend, all the smart contracts are, and it's actually also used on other UIs. And as you know, Sorbet is only one UI that utilizes the Gelato limit order service that we built, right? But the goal here is not that Sorbet becomes the super powerful UI that everyone uses on a daily basis. It works perfectly well for it, but it's more to have other UIs be able to plug into our backend to utilize our infrastructure on their side. And yeah, so limit orders we worked a lot on, and there's like an amazing update to the UI and the library coming up in the next few days that we will tell you more about in the near future. we actually launched dollar cost averaging. So you can now on mainnet buy, let's say, link tokens or DAI every day using your ETH, or you can buy ETH every day using your DAI, for example. It's a really powerful feature. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It works really well. Then, in case you missed it, Uniswap, which is one of the leading dexes on Phantom, Uniswap fork, actually integrated Gelato. And if you click here and you switch to the Phantom network and you go to swap, you can actually place limit orders on Phantom. And guess what? It's powered by Gelato in the background. So it's our infrastructure querying it, executing it, and making sure it works reliable. And this is the goal. More websites like Uniswap integrating Gelato and providing you with awesome functionalities like these that require our bots in the background, right? And yeah, so Gelato Dan's first month has passed. He did a really amazing job. Shout out to Dan. And I hope you guys got to know him and he answered all your questions appropriately. And yeah, he's always up for helping you guys. So if you have questions, reach out to him. I think our social media figures really increased as well. We are soon hitting the 10K on Twitter. So this is a huge milestone for us. And yeah, we really grow the community in the past week. So it's amazing to see that. And we'll be super pleased with that result in such a short period of time. And yeah, I think, as you know, we already announced our token, the GEL token is announced and will be released in the third quarter of this year. We are working on making this happen in the background. It takes some time, but bear with us. It will be worth it. And we're just making sure everything works smoothly. Yeah, we're working on this tirelessly. And yeah, then our growth lead, Dave, he was in Miami, right? And I think they had an amazing party there. There were a lot of interesting people there. As you see, Chainlink God was on their table. So he really connected with a lot of people there. And I think it looked like a fun time. And I think you spread the word about Gelato and even more people know about it now. So I think it was a really nice trip, right, Dave?
Absolutely. It was a great time, and a lot more people know about Gelato and what we're about and the big things that are coming.
Awesome, yeah. We already got a lot of cool contacts to other projects due to this trip, so I think it was definitely worth it. So really well done on this. And yeah, what's next? As I said, we got an amazing improvement to the limit orders coming up on the UI side, on the library side. We are working on getting DCA on Polygon to so you guys can enjoy like cheap transaction fees over there. And we are working on some other cool things like automated debt management and automated treasury management for DAOs with some other projects that is still low key now. We can't really disclose, but it will be amazing. And yeah, then the token sale, of course, is coming up. We are working on this. And then we have this amazing new feature that we've been working on, which is called G-UNI. It's basically automated liquidity provision on Uniswap. And I think Ari, he will take it over from now and tell you more about it.
Cool. Hey, everybody. So yeah, rest of the time here, we're going to talk about the new automated Uniswap v3 liquidity provision wrapper that I've been working really hard on the last while. It's been super exciting project. I have a little set of slides for you guys. So I'm going to share my screen. And let me try to present. Everybody see that? Nice. Okay, cool. So this is a really exciting feature. We're not even the only ones who are looking into this. It was even hinted at in the Uniswap v3 white paper. So it's an exciting time. We're right here at the beginning of Uniswap v3, and nobody really knows what these auto rebalancing strategies are going to look like and develop into. Uniswap v3 automated liquidity provision using Gelato. So we're going to talk about how we're doing that. But the only way to do that, of course, is, I often tell people, friends I know, hey, I'm working on this really cool thing. But of course, you have to know what Uniswap version 2 is, you have to know what Uniswap is, you have to know what Uniswap version 3 is, and only then can you understand what automated LPing is all about and why it's such an exciting feature. So we've got to go back over Uniswap v2. I put a lot of math in here, but we're not going to go so deep into it. Don't worry. I'll try to, we don't need a math lesson right now. It's 9 a.m. here in New York City. So Uniswap version 2, right? This is a really exciting paradigm. It's an automated market maker. This is sort of a first of its kind. Right, and maybe if you don't know what an automated market maker is, you can think about it, as they say on the Bankless podcast, as just a money robot. This is a smart contract. It holds two assets. We're going to call them X and Y for now, but you can think of them as ETH and DAI. And the nice thing is that you can trade these assets against this smart contract, against this money robot. And it always has a price that it'll quote for you. And this price is determined by a very simple formula, this constant product formula, which you're seeing the graph of it here. X times Y, the amount we have of one asset in reserves multiplied by the amount we have of the other assets in reserve, is always equal to a constant. And this creates this hyperbolic curve we're seeing here. And the nice property that this has is that if everybody wants to buy asset Y and everyone is selling asset X, well, the price will change in such a way that we never completely deplete asset Y, even though everybody wants it, right? So it'll just keep getting more and more expensive until the very last little bit of asset Y, or let's say ETH, which is pumping against the dollar, will be very, very hard to extract, because it'll actually cost you an infinite amount of tokens, of DAI tokens, to actually get the last tiny bit of ETH, and same in the other direction. So this is the nice property. You have something that will always have a price, and it'll always have at least a little bit of liquidity in the two assets. And then we can all just trade in the, as they say, that Uniswap is like the town square of tokens, because it's super easy. If you want to trade, you can go there and make your trade against this decentralized exchange. Amazing. Now, in practice, we don't even need to go over this example, but it's worth thinking about that the reserves of the assets change, right, as people trade against the pool. So whenever someone trades against the pool, we know how much asset X we have, we know how much asset Y we have, we know the current amount of liquidity, or this constant K, which we know we need to keep constant during the trade. And so all that happens is we know we're going to take in some asset X, and we're going to release some asset Y to the user who's trying to buy asset Y. And how do we figure out how much asset Y to give the user? Well, we look at this formula here, right? X plus delta X. Let's say I want to sell 1 ETH for DAI. So there's the total amount of ETH in there. Then there's the 1 ETH I want to sell. There's the total amount of DAI currently in there. And then there's this unknown, how much DAI to credit the user who's selling ETH for DAI. And because we know all the other variables, we can just solve for delta Y, and you'll see that the current price was 1,000 DAI gives you 1 ETH. But of course, because as we trade, the price actually slips upon this curve, we actually only get 909 ETH, 909 DAI out. And this is excluding the fees that liquidity providers actually earn. So this creates a really nice market. People anywhere in the world, anonymously, we can all just add liquidity to this pool by supplying some of the two assets. And then we can all earn fees on the trading, and the trading happens automatically without needing to find a buyer. You don't need to connect buyers and sellers like an old-fashioned order book. We just all trade against this bot, who gives us a price which is determined by how it slips as traders trade. So here you can see a small trade. We start where it says USDC spent there. That's the original price, right? And then as we sell USDC, we get some ETH, and the price slips all the way down to where you see ETH spent hitting the pool. And as you can see, the larger the trade is, the more slippage you get. And so at the very end here, is we're reaching like depleting ETH almost completely, right? Even if we spend a lot more USDC, we only get an infinitesimally bit more of ETH, right? Because of the way the curve looks. You see the curve is now really, really close to zero already. So no matter how much USDC you spend, you only get a tiny bit more of that ETH, and it never goes to zero. Okay, great. This is Uniswap version 2. Probably most of you are very familiar. So let's move on. Great. Just worth saying about Uniswap version 2 I'm not going to go over these formulas here. I can send you a little paper that I've written up if you want to look into these more deeply. But basically, it's worth thinking about the amount of liquidity tokens you get, right? Because in Uniswap v2, when you provide liquidity, you provide some ETH and some DAI, you get back some tokens, a fungible token, which is basically your proportion of the pool that you own, so that in the future you can burn these tokens and get back all of your liquidity plus all the fees you earned. And this happens automatically with this like accounting liquidity token. Now, how many liquidity tokens do you get, or how much ETH and DAI do you need to supply to get one liquidity token, right? This is determined by these three formulas at the bottom here. Right, so you have delta L, that's the change in liquidity, the amount of liquidity tokens to mint or burn to create for a user. Let's say mint them because I'm adding assets into the pool, and then we can figure out, if we know delta L and we know the current price, we can figure out how much X and Y we actually have to supply. And the reason it's worth looking at the formulas like this is because if you, instead of thinking about just X times Y equals K, if you think about these three formulas, then it'll be very simple to abstract and to understand Uniswap version 3, which is a bit more complicated, but really exciting, right? So now, as many of you have heard, just a few months ago, the white paper came out, and even more recently that we actually started Uniswap v3 launched on mainnet. So what is Uniswap v3 all about? Well, this Uniswap version 2 has one issue. I'm going to stick on this graph just for 1 second. The issue is the fact that whenever we supply liquidity, we have to supply liquidity across this entire price range, right? So some of the liquidity, a lot of it actually, is sitting on these long tails, like when ETH would be worth 50,000 DAI, or when one DAI is worth 50,000 ETH, right? Very, very unlikely that ETH is going to fall that far. But we have to make sure that we're always going to have assets no matter where the price moves. And the money robot doesn't know what are feasible prices, right? It just moves along this curve. And so a lot of our liquidity is not being utilized. It's very inefficient, because maybe trading in ETH and DAI, it only really goes between, I don't know, let's say $1 and $20,000, or 1 DAI and 20,000 DAI is what 1 ETH is worth. And everything outside of that, it's like, it's never going to happen, but we still have liquidity there for these just in case days when those prices hit the market, but of course they never do. So Uniswap v3 tries to solve this problem, tries to make the capital more efficient in the automated market maker, so we can have deeper liquidity at the prices that actually matter. So how do we do this? Uniswap version 3. So the idea, the abstraction that they went with, and this takes a second to wrap your head around, so no worries if you don't get it right here on this first try. I'm going to do my best. It's basically the idea that we're going to abstract this constant product market maker formula that works so well in Uniswap because it's so simple. But the only thing we're going to do is we're going to allow ourselves to concentrate our liquidity, or bound the range upon which the liquidity that we provide is active. So liquidity providers now have this new choice, the choice to say, where do you want your liquidity concentrated? You don't just have to supply assets now. You can say, I'm supplying assets, but I'm only supplying them between price B and price A, right? Where C is the current price, the current trading price right now. And I'm saying, I only think ETH and DAI will move about this far within, who knows, a certain time range. So I only want to supply assets in this area of the curve. And once we go out, once prices are outside of there, I don't want my capital to be utilized. What this does is it allows you to provide more liquidity. You get more liquidity for less assets. And the reason is because imagine that every time someone provides assets, we can still construct one of these normal Uniswap curves, right? But now we're going to think of this curve as a virtual curve. It's a virtual curve because we don't actually have to supply all the assets that we would in order to create this curve, where you to get this much liquidity, you don't have to supply the same amount of assets as you would in V2. The amount you have to supply in order to get liquidity this large in version 2 would be all the way from the y-axis all the way across to where it says X real, right? You see this X real? And Y real also, if you extend that all the way down to the X-axis, this would be the amount of assets you'd need to supply in version 2 in order to construct this curve and have this much liquidity. But because when I'm adding liquidity, I only want to supply it between prices B and A. That means I only need to account for my liquidity only needs to have enough of an asset in there to account for price movement down to A, right? Which means now I only need to supply this Y real. The amount of assets I need to supply in version 3, if my price bounds are B and A, are just X real and Y real. So I can provide this much liquidity, but with this discount, right? The difference between X real and the whole distance from the end of X real all the way to the Y-axis, right? That extra from the curve to the Y-axis there is like the discount I get, but still provide the same amount of liquidity. And of course, the more compressed your price ranges are, the more liquidity you can provide with less assets. But obviously, once the price escapes your bounds, you stop earning fees because you said, I only want to earn fees. I only want people to trade my assets inside these certain prices. So you get more bang for your buck if your liquidity is more concentrated. On the other hand, it's less likely that the price is going to stay inside of those tighter bounds. So, and once the price moves out, you stop earning fees altogether. What makes this really nice for Uniswap and why this works, why this was a really smart way to do this, is that now we can actually just have normal Uniswap. The same exact formulas we had before. The only thing we have to keep track of is whenever we move out or into someone's bounds, we're going to add a little bit more liquidity in, and this curve is going to shift. It's going to get bigger or smaller depending on if more liquidity becomes active after that price or less liquidity becomes active after that price. So now we just have Uniswap version 3 in all of these buckets, but in each bucket, it's a slightly different curve with more or less liquidity depending on all the liquidity providers and who deposited a lot into this part of the range versus other parts of the range will have very little or no liquidity. Imagine in stable coins in Uniswap version 2, we were supplying assets and it was highly inefficient for prices between two stable coins. Like one USDC is worth 1 million DAI. It's never going to happen, right? Now we can all concentrate our liquidity around, 95 cents to $1.05, and we can have a really high efficiency on stablecoin pairs in Uniswap as well. So this is the idea. If you look at the formulas here, you can see how do we actually compute the amount of X or Y you have to supply to get a certain amount of liquidity. Well, now you just have to take into account these price bounds, right? And they make it so that the closer your price low or price high is to the current price, then of course, right, since you see that subtraction there, it's going to be a smaller number. So you can get a larger liquidity number multiplied by that smaller number to then still have to supply a certain smaller amount of assets. Anyway, so here we are, again, not going to go too deep into the formulas here, but you see them. Of course, when you're outside the bounds, one very interesting thing is you are entirely composed in one asset or the other. So if the price is lower than your lowest price, now we are all in the X asset and the Y asset, we have 0 left, right? And on the other hand, it's the same. So basically, the amount of each asset you're holding has to do with where the price is in relation to your bounds. If it's right in the middle of your price bounds, it's just like Uniswap v2, you have 50-50 of each asset. But as the price moves, the composition of your position will change a lot. And if you have a very tight price bound, all of a sudden you might be all in ETH or all in DAI. We're not going to talk about these range orders, but just to say you can construct an interesting kind of poor man's limit order or a range order with these positions. If you just place it above your position entirely above or below the current price and you make it really small, it's kind of like once you hit that price, you're going to sell all of your asset for the other one and you get a kind of limit order. All right.
Ari, I have one question for you.
Yes.
So in Uniswap V2, it was not possible for me as a liquidity provider to be all in one asset, right? Because it would go to infinity,
Exactly.
right? But now basically I can go to 0 in one asset.
Exactly, because the price has we're still on a price curve. We're just outside of the portion of the curve that you've selected. And yeah, this is exactly right. In Uniswap version 2, you actually never run out of one asset completely. You can get really small in one or the other if the price fluctuates very far from where you initially supplied, but you never completely run out. In Uniswap version 3, you actually can completely run out. And this is exactly why you can construct a limit order now, right? Because you can actually completely take all your ETH and turn it into DAI or vice versa. Here's a little worked example about the difference, right? So we're going to use these formulas with delta X and delta Y and delta L. And you see that in version 2, if the current price is 1 ETH equals 1,000 DAI, let's say both liquidity providers, a V3 liquidity provider and a V2 liquidity provider, they both want to provide 10,000 units of liquidity. In V2, they would need, in order to do this, they'd need 316 ETH or so and 300,000 DAI at this price. In V3, if you select a price range that's about, let's just select one that's 100% change in both directions. So if current price is 1,000, we can go up to 2,000 or down to 500. If we select that range, you see that in order to provide the same amount of liquidity, we only need about a third of the assets that we, so this is where you see that this discount coming into action. And all of this creates a very different set of norms and practices and ideas of what liquidity providers need to do in order to make money and earn competitive fees. So this is where automated liquidity provision comes in. Because, okay, let's go over why is LPing a lot more difficult in V3, or let's say maybe not more difficult, more interesting, or you have more choices and more control. So first of all, you have this choice of your range, right? What price ranges do I want to select for my liquidity to be active inside of? Now, the better your range selection, the better the price prediction you have, basically, right? You kind of are assuming the volatility will be in some range or that the price will move in a certain direction. And if you're right about that, if you have good price prediction, you're going to have a better performance because you'll be earning fees for longer while other people's ranges will become inactive. And so this is very important. This is different. In Uniswap V2, we all exposed ourselves to the exact same price ranges, so we had no choice here. We were all in the same boat. Now, another thing, just a small technical detail, is that fees are no longer automatically reinvested into the pool. And Uniswap V2, whenever you were earning fees, just automatically those were being compounded and being the fees you earned were thought of as liquidity that you've added into the pool. Now, because Uniswap V3 is a bit more complex, the fees actually don't just get added in, they're sitting on the sideline. So another thing you have to decide is when or if to reinvest these fees earned into your position. So thirdly, you can of course adjust your range or maybe wait for them to return to your range. This is, imagine if the price has moved out of your range, what do you do now? Another choice for liquidity providers that never existed before. Do you think the price is going to come back and you leave it there, or do you want to withdraw your liquidity and put it in a new position around a new range so that you start earning fees again? Lastly, the most important thing potentially is that because of the need for these adjustments, right? Maybe you're going to reinvest the fees, maybe you're going to change the bounds a little bit. These cost transaction fees, and you're going to need to be doing this active adjustment more often, the tighter the range you have. And so this heavily favors whales and large holders because, if transaction fees are large and you're spending a couple $1,000s worth of ETH a week just to manage your position, that doesn't make sense if your position is only worth a few $1,000s as well. But it does make sense if your position is worth millions of dollars and you're earning tons of fees within those periods between adjustments. So it's worth it. So this is one aspect. And of course, the final aspect, this is actually the most important one, is that these LP positions are now not fungible. They're necessarily non-fungible tokens or just non-fungible because each position has these unique bounds now, right? Before, we all had a proportion of the pool, but now the proportion of the pool I have is only a proportion of the pool within the bounds that I selected. So each of us has these unique bounds, and this means that a lot of things, right, like liquidity mining schemes, or MakerDAO, which allows you to use as collateral the LP tokens from Uniswap, all of this doesn't work anymore because those all assumed that we all had these fungible liquidity tokens that we could actually use and knew exactly what value they represented at all times, as opposed to with these non-fungible ones, it's all a little bit trickier since each position is unique. And of course, there was this idea, and it was already envisioned and anticipated in the Uniswap announcement. I'm just going to read this whole quote out, I guess, which is, this is from Uniswap: common shared positions can be made fungible, the ERC20s, via peripheral contracts or through other partner protocols. Over time, we expect increasingly sophisticated strategies to be tokenized, making it possible for LPs to participate while maintaining a passive user experience. This could include multi-positions, auto-rebalancing to concentrate around the market price, fee reinvestment, lending, and more. Okay, so cool. Tons of hints in here from Uniswap about what we might be doing. So let's just think about it. The first thing to remember is that Uniswap v3, what it introduces is LPs are no longer just passive, just holding their liquidity tokens. Now we have all these choices to make. It's active. But we can't have that passive user experience. And now also the strategy you employ in this activity is what really matters. It's going to make or break your the ROI of your liquidity provision. So all of a sudden, there's this idea that different strategies, potentially even automated strategies, can now be wrapped up. So we have a position. This position has a strategy. It's going to adjust itself like this. Maybe it auto rebalances around the current price. Maybe it just reinvests the fees periodically. Maybe it's a layering of a couple of positions. These are the things there's hinting at in Uniswap of different choices you could make. But we can take this position, let's imagine it's just one position, and then a smart contract can own it. And around that smart contract, we can fractionalize it. And each of us can have now fungible tokens, which represent our proportion of this smart contracts position in the Uniswap pool. And so this is what we're working on and what we're doing. And we're not the only ones, but of course, there's many different strategies. Some are more automated than others. You could, of course, do this in a totally manual way. But the beauty of Gelato is we have this automation infrastructure that's highly reliable. And this is going to allow us to try things like auto rebalancing, auto fee reinvestment, and making it work in such a way that you don't need to trust administrators to actually be doing this on your behalf. It's all happening with bots that have a known set of parameters, what they're allowed to do, how they're allowed to rebalance. So let's get into that. So introducing G-UNI, G-UNI tokens. These are just tokenized, the possibility for different tokenized LP strategies. And what's exciting about the way that we're doing it, you'll see a number of projects that are doing like a one-off pool. You know, you can dive into our pool and we'll handle the strategy for you, right? And this is nice, but maybe it involves high trust towards those groups. Also, maybe it's not as automated, but most importantly, they're not general, right? What we're hoping to have is a generalized framework for making fungible tokenized LP strategies where the automation is handled by Gelato in the background. So we've already created 2 types of pools. Basically, we're dealing with the ideas where we haven't dealt with multi-positions yet or lending. So the 2 that we've targeted in those in that Uniswap quote are auto rebalancing around the current market price or a simple fee reinvestment. And we'll talk about the difference between these 2 and why they're both interesting. So the static pools, these are the simplest. And what's nice is when you're auto rebalancing around the current price, there are risks. The risk is mainly that you could rebalance yourself to death. If you have a bad strategy about the prediction of the volatility and of the prices, you might actually have a negative ROI strategy as you keep rebalancing, right? Think about the price goes out of your range up, so you rebalance this way, and then it goes back down, so you rebalance this way. So you're spending money rebalancing, and also losing to some to impermanent loss because of this. And because you're going back and forth in the same directions, you're basically losing money to impermanent loss over and over and spending money on transaction fees, and you can actually have a negative ROI strategy. So what's nice about the static pool is this definitely won't happen. Of course, you might you might escape the bounds, and probably won't be able to create strategies with as tight bounds as you would in a dynamic pool, but there's you don't have this issue of potentially rebalancing yourself in a way that is will have negative yield. So very simple. Here, Gelato just reinvests the fees that the pool has earned, so that we can start compounding. You know, all the fees we've earned can now be liquidity earning fees as well. And it'll do this whenever a certain threshold of fees have been earned. It's only allowed to do it when a certain threshold of fees have been earned. The reason for this is because we don't want the bots, you know, rebalancing more than they should on purpose just to earn transaction fees back. So we need to have this threshold on chain, so these transactions would revert if we haven't earned enough fees for it to be worth it to spend the transaction fee to actually reinvest the fees. And then the actual bounds of the position is not up to Gelato. Gelato bots cannot change this, but the pool governance, whatever governance was instantiated for the pool, can change the bounds of this position with an executive rebalance function. So this is sort of the training wheels version. There is Gelato automation for reinvesting fees, but the bounds is handled by governance, so the rebalancing can be handled carefully. It's not an automated strategy that's just happening all the time. So this could be very useful for a number of different things. Especially if you have like a larger ranges, but you want something to be sort of within a large but manageable range, and you really want to have deep liquidity inside that range, you could create one of these pools. Now, the dynamic pools are slightly more complicated, but basically the idea is the Gelato bot can now rebalance around the current price. So tighter ranges that follow the market price, earning more multiplied fees, right? Because the tighter range means you have more liquidity, so you're earning more proportional fees. But you're going to need to be making a lot more important decisions about what bounds to select on every rebalance and when is it worth it actually to rebalance. But before going totally into that, it's just to say the last point here, which is the idea is to have now some factory contracts for trustless deployment of these strategies, so that we basically have a complete and generic wrapper for the entire Uniswap v3 LP experience. So basically any dApp or protocol, or even just a group of people who want to do this could set up a governing account, or it could even just be someone's own personal account as the admin, though this is highly, there's a lot of trust associated to this, of course, since the admin has some special controls. So it's better if it's like a governance module, but they can just call this factory smart contract to deploy their own version of one of these G-UNI pools, which will automatically hook up with Gelato's backend to do the rebalancing, to do the automated activity, which might be rebalancing around the current price, and it might be just the static fee reinvestment. If it's the static fee reinvestment, it's very, very simple. You have to do almost nothing. You don't need to even submit something to the backend, since it's pretty simple to figure out what the backend strategy is. It's just make sure that you set the threshold of the fees you should earn correctly. With the dynamic pools, it's more interesting. You might actually submit a custom strategy to the Gelato bots to say, okay, use this off-chain logic in order to determine when you rebalance where to set this new range, right? And these could get increasingly sophisticated. Currently, we're dealing with, pretty simple but sensible rebalancing strategies, since this can get highly complicated, but you could imagine that these could become very, very complex and have a lot of interesting off-chain logic, volatility analysis, things like the Black-Scholes formula and other like financial formulas that help us basically predict things about how the prices might move with random walks, machine learning based on the prior time series prices, that now you have a model that just sort of has a sense of what the volatility will be. The world is your oyster, and you can have the backend use whatever engine you want in order to determine how and when to rebalance. And you can submit that to the bots. The bots will use that strategy. But of course, on chain, there's still some logic the governance can set to make sure that whatever the bot does is within an acceptable range, right? So maybe your dynamic pool, you say, well, the maximum size, we want really tight prices. So the maximum size of the next rebalance can only be, maximum 10% above and 10% below the current price. If the bot tries to rebalance anything larger than that, then this rebalance transaction will revert. Same thing about how often it can rebalance. In the dynamic one, there's a number of variables that can be adjusted by the governance to make sure that Gelato bots are definitely doing what you want them to be doing. And then even later in the future, when the gel token is out, we can actually be slashing bots just for not using the backend that you submitted correctly. Not only these on-chain hard conditions, like you can only rebalance once a day or this and that, but even make sure that they're implementing the off-chain logic you submitted correctly. But that will only come once gel is out, which we're all very excited for. I think that is it. I've already taken a long time. Maybe there's going to be questions and stuff. So let me know, others too, if you think I should add things. How did I do?
Awesome, right? I think most of us we got it. Thanks a lot for the explainer. Maybe do we have some questions in the chat, maybe from some of the viewers? Then yeah, feel free to ask them, right?
Yeah, I'm looking. Don't see anything yet.
And in the meantime, we do encourage everyone to participate in our G-UNI meme generation event, which is not an official thing yet, but I think G-UNI has some good meme potential. And yeah, let's get creative here, everyone. If you can come up with something cool, post it in our Telegram, and we will reshare it and retweet it.
I see a question there, which is really good, actually. Great question, something I didn't go over, which is, are the rebalancing fees paid with liquidity fees earned? Yes, they are. This is what's great, is that Gelato bots front the transaction fee to execute the rebalance, but a little bit, when the rebalance is happening, a little bit of the value from the pool is sent back to the bot to recoup them for the transaction fee, plus a small incentivization price so that the bot is actually incentivized to be doing these operations on your behalf. But again, there's parameters to make sure that this only happens when it makes sense, right? If the fees earned are much lower than the transaction cost for rebalancing, then Gelato bot should not be allowed to do this, right? But yes, it does. The transaction fees come out of the pool directly, but it all happens nice and automatically, and this, of course, incentivizes the bots to keep serving your use case and keep automatically rebalancing your pool. Great question. Yep, G-UNI, we didn't know what to, I wasn't sure exactly what to call it. We were thinking, okay, Uniswap and Gelato, and I honestly arrived at that, and everybody had to tell me, it's like G-Unit. So here we are, but I think that's a good thing. We've got a lot of cool meme potential, as you say, Elmar. Okay, another question that's interesting. Shouldn't rebalancing affect not only middle price, but ranges as well in order to extract more value from LP? Yes, so this is where the back-end functionality can become very sophisticated. Currently, the highly simple rebalancing backend we have is basically pick a range, LP in that range, as long as the price is in there, stay. Once the price escapes your tight range completely, if it's been out for more than, if the time weighted average price, which is something you can check on Uniswap, has been out for more than a certain amount of time, then just rebalance around the new price with the new price as the middle with the same size range, right? This is a very simple idea, somewhat naive, but of course it's pretty simple to reason about. But once you get more sophisticated, you have some models about what you think the volatility will be. Maybe these ranges would be somewhat skewed, right? You think the price is on the way up. So when you rebalance, you should rebalance with the lower price closer to the current price and more space up here, so you don't have to rebalance again as quickly. And you know that you have a theory or some statistics about the idea that the price will stay inside this range, even though the price is pretty close to the bottom here. You can also, based on the volatility, dynamically select how wide these ranges should be. So when ETH is very, very, let's say ETH is very stable for a few days, all of a sudden we can tighten up the rebalancing range. When ETH is highly volatile, like during the crash, we would have been rebalancing like crazy. So maybe once you notice that's happening, you widen up the range. All of these are possibilities, but as you do this, you start to, it becomes increasingly complex to see whether or not you actually have a profitable strategy. So what's nice though is that it's also up to the G-UNI pool admins, who aren't necessarily always going to be us at all. We might deploy some, but there might be other dApps doing this, and it's up to them to decide what strategy they want to employ.
Ari, to repeat what Daryl Wesley said in the chat, when can we ape in?
So great question, and I guess I should show a little demo here of so we've already got a little bit on mainnet here. We can see here's a position that we have a G-UNI pool on the ETH DAI pair deployed on mainnet. We can see that we currently have 3,860 G-UNI tokens have been minted so far. It's some of us on the team and a few select people. This APY calculation, this is something we're still working on. It's highly volatile, so every hour or so, it's very, very different. We need to, set up some things in the back end, basically, so that we can have a much more smooth APY. So for those of you who have already been here, I know this has been a bit frustrating. The APY every 2 minutes looks very, very different. We can see the total capital that this position has and the composition. Why is the composition always changing? It's of course because here we can look at the price, right? This is the lower bound that was selected 9 hours and 17 minutes ago. This is the upper bound, and this is the current price. So as the current price moves inside of these bounds, the composition of our pool might change very, very much. If we get very close to the top here, we're going to be completely in DAI, since we're selling all our DAI for ETH since the price is rising. And then once we finally escape the bounds, this pool will automatically rebalance, which we've seen it been doing healthfully for the last few weeks. Here we can see my position. And what's nice is at any time, you actually have now this fungible LP token again. This is the whole idea, right? To make the complexity of Uniswap v3 abstracted. And now you can be this passive LP holder, make sure you're earning competitive fees. We can see how much we'd get if we burned, right? If I burn all these tokens, all right, I'd get about $342 worth, and then the supply will change, will go down by about 2.4%. Why don't let's do it. Let's remove this liquidity. Probably going to take a few minutes, so we'll see if it goes through. We can check out the transaction.
Yeah, I think that we are working on the UI, right? We're doing some updates there, and this is also not bound to the sorbet UI. This is really for trying it out. It will most likely be actually available to you on another UI pretty soon, which will be more user-friendly, project we've been working with. But yeah, we will improve that, and please, like, we are looking for some people that want to test this and want to help and kind of like be with us in the trenches, right, and try this new technology out. So if you are interested in something like that and automating LPing, then please reach out to Gelato Dan in the community chat. Just DM him, and then we can get you set up. We can help you. We can create a group with you, and we can walk you through how it works and everything, and just make sure that nothing goes wrong, because this is still experimental, obviously. And yeah, maybe also just to zoom out 1 second, what this really allows and creates is really, it enables everyone in the world that has tokens, right, sitting idle in their wallet, really utilize them and provide and get a stable APY, or maybe not that stable, but a good API over APY over a longer period of time. And Uniswap v3 is really complicated and was really built for like sophisticated liquidity providers that run sophisticated technology. And what Gelato is all about kind of like leveraging the playing field here, right? We enable developers to build and provide these automated, more sophisticated services, like automatically providing liquidity of Uniswap v3 and constantly moving with the price. We enable developers to actually offer that to their users without having to deal with all the underlying complexity of running these bots, about setting this thing up, right, and maintaining it and monitoring it, right? And this is basically what Gelato enables, and this is what we are here to perfect and really try to help build. And I'm super excited about this here because literally everyone in the world with a click of a button can be a sophisticated liquidity provider of one of the most liquid decentralized exchanges in the world, right? So I think this is groundbreaking stuff. Amazingly explained, Ari. We are super excited about this. And yeah, if you want to participate, please reach out. We are experimenting with this. We have a first stable version out there. We will soon also audit everything. So it's still not audited, obviously, but we did a lot of thorough testing. And yes, still, please reach out to us, to Hilma X, to Ari, to Luis, to Gelato Dan, everyone here in the chat. You know us. And yeah, let's get you hooked up. And it will soon be available for everyone after we make sure it's really tested and bulletproof. And then, yeah, then everyone can just participate easily.
So exciting. And as you can see here, I've had on the screen that this transaction went through. We can see we burned these G-UNI tokens, sent them to the 0 address. And because of that, I get my proportion of the liquidity in there. So we have to remove some liquidity from Uniswap, collect it, and then it gets sent to me here. So cool. Thanks, everybody. I think we went on long enough, or I have at least. So I'm done. But thank you guys, and yeah, definitely let us know if you're looking to try it out, because we're looking for liquidity.
Thanks, Ari. Great job.
Thank you, Ari.
Awesome. Then I think we can pack things up, right? Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. See you at the next community call, which will probably be soon. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Telegram, hit that subscribe button. And yeah, we will be out here pretty soon again with some new news. And DM us in the group if you want to participate in the early liquidity provision of G-UNI, and we will get you hooked up. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.